Welcome back to Grumpy Vet Garage. Today we're going to be doing an oil change on Mrs. Grumpy Vet's 2022 Kia Telluride. But before we can get started, we actually need to get a little bit of clearance underneath the vehicle. So to gain the clearance we needed, I'm using some ramps that I made to get clearance when I lift up my Supra and on my clips. But they'll work for any vehicle. But you don't need to necessarily go buy 2x12s and cut them down and make something like this. You could simply use a 2x4. The main thing you're trying to do is just get something here that you can actually get the vehicle up on top of to get you a little bit of clearance so that your drain pan and actually just give yourself access to work underneath the vehicle. So now I'm going to go ahead and lift the car up onto the ramps. Ramps like I used has a hard stop, so you know when you're on top of it. But if you're using a 2x4, this would really be a two-person process so they can see when you're up on top and centered on the 2x4 or whatever you're using. But now let's go ahead and get up underneath the vehicle and remove an access panel so we can see the bottom of the engine. I went ahead and popped the hood, but now we're going to need to get underneath. We can see this panel right here that we need to remove. It has 8 fasteners. And all 8 fasteners are 10 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those fasteners now to remove this panel. So now we're going to prepare to drain oil. So what we're going to need to do is take the oil cap and go ahead and open it. You don't need to remove it, but just crack it so that air can get past it. And now going back underneath. What I failed to mention earlier is it is good practice to warm up the engine. Drive it around a little bit. You don't want the oil to be hot per se. Maybe let it cool off if you come from a long drive. You want the oil to be warm so that it'll suspend any kind of contaminants that may have gotten into the oil and let that flow out with this oil change. And on the back side of the oil pan is a 17 millimeter drain plug that we need to remove to drain the oil. So coming in with a 17 millimeter. Okay, so our oil's flowing out. I have the plug in my hand. The drain pan I'm using is actually a drain pan that I've had since the 90s. All the tools I'm using to do this oil change, I'll leave a link in the description to find a suitable tool to use. But get yourself a good drain pan because you change your oil here, but it'll also be applicable to any other vehicle later on that you would change oil in. So while the oil finishes draining, I figure I'd go ahead and show you what I'm using for the oil change. I'm using Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W30. And then for the filter, I'm using a Wix, which is a WL10033. I'm going to leave a list of all the actual filters that I could find for the Kia Telluride in the description. So inside the filter kit comes the actual filter. But additionally, it comes with new O-ring for the oil filter housing and a new crush washer for the drain plug. So when you remove the drain plug, don't reuse this crush washer. Your filter should come with a new crush washer for the drain plug. So the crush washer on the drain plug, it should just either pull off or you may have to unscrew it off. But go ahead and discard this one. Get your new crush washer and then just place it over the drain plug. Now you're ready to go ahead and reinstall this plug on the engine. Okay, our draining oil is down to a trickle. So to get it to stop trickling, just kind of reach around. Put the plug, start it in. It doesn't take much to stop a slow trickle like that. And just run it down finger tight. Come in with a rag. You want to clean up any kind of excess oil. You don't want the bottom of your engine being dirty. But now we need to go ahead and torque the plug to 25 to 33 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and set my torque wrench to 29 foot-pounds, which is in between, because torque wrenches have a variance of higher or lower. If you go in the middle, you have the best chance of getting in the range assigned by the manufacturer. So I have a 3/8 drive torque wrench and a 17 millimeter socket. Now I'm going to come in and just torque on this plug. Okay, so it's torqued on. Now that we've torqued on the oil drain plug, we can now move our focus over to the oil filter. So the oil filter is inside of this canister. We just need to come in with a 27 millimeter oil filter socket or a standard 27 millimeter socket to remove this filter. I'm using an oil filter socket like this one. Again, I'll leave a link in the description for a socket like this and everything else that I'm using in this oil change. So with the drain pan positioned underneath the oil filter housing, it really doesn't take too much effort to go ahead and unscrew off the filter housing. Bringing the cap forward and down. Now once you remove the cap, go ahead and tilt it over and let it drain out. So as you can see here, the oil filter housing with the old oil filter. To remove the old oil filter, all you need to do is just take and pull it out. There's a little clip holding it in, but you just need to wiggle it and pull it out like that. So now we can put in the new oil filter. And the good thing about this design filter is it can go in either way. Both sides are the same. So getting a little bit of oil from the inside, old oil's fine. Just lube up the O-ring. And so we don't forget later, lube up the other side as well. And now take the oil filter and just put a little twist and pop it down. Now it's secured into the oil filter housing. Next, we need to remove the old O-ring. To do that, I'm going to use a pick tool, but you could use a screwdriver. But whatever you want to do, just make sure not to damage the housing. The O-ring is coming off, so if it gets damaged, not a big deal, but don't score your housing. And there's the old one off. Put that to the side. Now grab your new O-ring, and there's plenty of oil that's been on my hands from taking it off, so just transfer that oil over. Now carefully take it and place it back onto the oil filter housing. But now you can see it's in the groove, not the threaded area, but the groove right here. And what we have now is a new oil filter ready to go in. Okay, now you can come in with your oil filter and go ahead and thread it into the housing, being careful not to cross thread it. Okay, now that the oil filter is started by hand, you can come in with your wrench and then run it down flush, but don't tighten it yet. Now that it's down flush, you can come in with your torque wrench. You're going to torque the housing to 18 foot-pounds or 20. The torque really doesn't need to be all that much. The actual sealing action isn't being done by like a cross washer. It's being done by the O-ring. And as long as the O-ring is in contact and this is snug, you're going to be good. So now with the oil filter installed, drain plug installed, we can come back up top and start filling up oil. So I went ahead and fully removed the oil cap, moved it to the side, and I went ahead and installed my favorite funnel. Now it's time to go ahead and put in 6.9 quarts of 5W30 oil. So this first jug of Pennzoil is 5 quarts. So we're going to go ahead and put this entire 5-quart jug into the engine now. Okay, so for the next 1.9 quarts, you have a couple options. I have an actual oil measuring cup that I have because similar to the Kia, my Supra doesn't take whole quarts of oil. I have to measure out a little bit of a quart. So I bought an actual measuring cup. You can use this, or you can use the side of the empty jug that you just used. So it's got measurements right here in quarts and measurements in liters, and you could turn around and just fill up from your other container into this container, more than one, up to just below the 2, and pour that in. But because I have a measuring cup, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. Okay, so 1 quart. And then 0.9 quarts, which is actually 28.8 ounces. Okay, so we're done filling, so now we can remove the funnel and install the oil cap. So next what we're going to want to do is go ahead and start up the car and then get back underneath it while it's running and check to make sure we don't have any leaks. Okay, so everything's buttoned up under the hood, under the car, and I've already reversed the vehicle off of the ramps. Last thing we need to do is reset the service interval. So what you're going to do is utilizing the menu button right here. You're going to go over to user settings right there, and then using this toggle right here, which is up and down, and then you push it to select. You're going to, let me get good right there. You're going to go down until you see service intervals, and then you're going to hit OK. And then you're going to see service requested, and I went over too far, which is fine. It's not that big a deal. There's a little bit of headway in there. But what you're going to do is you're going to hold it down. And then it's going to pull up after a little bit of time, reset time and interval. You're then going to go ahead and press yes. And now you can see it's gone back to 7,500 or a year. That's what the rating is for synthetic oil, which we used. I really hope this video was able to help somebody that was trying to change their oil on their Kia Telluride. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to Grumpy Vet Garage. It really helps the channel to grow. But thanks for coming and seeing me in my garage. And until next time, have a good one.